Thanks for tuning in for Gospel Solutions for Families on the Mormon channel. This show is all about offering practical, relevant tips for raising children in faith. I'm your host, Amy Iverson. Thank you for joining us. Today's episode is on navigating the use of social media and teaching our families how to be digital citizens and what that has to do with living our faith. This is something that's still fairly new to the world and sometimes might feel like it's slipping out of reach. Our conversation today is with Dina Alexander. She's the founder and president of Educate and Empower Kids. Dina received her master's degree from the University of Utah in recreation therapy, and she's taught in various capacities for the past 19 years. She's the mother of 3 children and lives in Texas with her husband. Thank you for being here.
Thanks.
Now, I want to talk to you about first, what is a digital citizen? What is that to you?
That is a great question. So, because most parents have no idea, they've never heard that term. So we are focusing on digital citizenship a lot this year. We are realizing that it's just no longer enough to talk to kids about the no's, about pornography, about dangers, about safety. Those are all super important things. But being a digital citizen is how you are online. It's about being authentic. It's about being your true self online. It's about being the same person you are in the light as you are in the dark. So we are trying to help parents understand how important this is, not only to model it, but to teach it and cooperate and co-create with kids about a digital citizenship, a digital community, because that is where we're at. This is where we are living now. This is how technology is. We're becoming a global community. We're a global church. This is how we're going to communicate best. And so those things need to be done deliberately. We can no longer just say, oh yeah, here's a phone. Oh, you want to be on social media? Okay, there you go. We have to be doing this very intentionally for ourselves and for our kids. So that is what it means to be a digital citizen, to be deliberate, to be intelligent about what we're doing, to teach our kids responsibility, to make good choices, and for us to do those things as well.
And I think there's a big learning curve for most parents. I feel like a lot of parents don't understand how their children are really living online now. Can you kind of explain to those out there who don't understand that it's a different world for our kids now?
Absolutely. So especially social media. So social media has become just so much bigger than any of us ever thought it was. And that is particularly difficult for parents to understand because we are using it in a very different way. You and I might show a family photo. We might show a trip we're taking. We might show a service project. At least that's what I show because I'm showing good mommy when I am on Instagram or on Facebook. I'm selling, and we're all selling something on social media. So helping our kids realize that is part of social media, but also I want to help other parents realize that our kids are using it very differently. So we're sharing photos, but they are using it to build relationships. We might use it to connect with somebody we went to high school 20 years ago. They're using it, even though it is a very shallow form of communication. This is what they consider relationships. This is where they're texting, where they're flirting, where they're becoming close friends, where they're having private messages, that those experiences to them are becoming their world. So this is where they live. And a lot of parents, in turn, when they hear of the dangers, when they hear about bullying, when they hear about predators, they want to immediately take their kids off of social media. And I have to say, this might not be the right choice because this is where kids live. For some people, that would be like social suicide to take them completely off of social media. And the reason why we do have bullies and predators on social media is because that is where kids are. Bullies and predators are going to be anywhere kids are, whether that's at the local park, whether that's in the ward or community, they are going to be where kids are. And it happens to be that kids are living online. So that is where predators and, but there's also where good people are too.
Yeah. And so it's a lot about teaching them the appropriate way to use it. But you mentioned something that does kind of worry me because of those relationships that form through texting or through instant messaging somehow. The flirting and the forming relationships, I feel like kids these days are willing to say and show more on their texting or even some of their social media, maybe Snapchat or something, the disappearing messages that they would never say or share in private. Have you noticed that as well?
Absolutely. And I'm noticing it in adults. I'm sure in the last election year, we saw many things that we were like, really? Oh, that's what you're going to say. That's really not nice. That happens everywhere. So I think owning that we as adults do the same thing. doing so that we can start changing our behavior to model that good behavior for our kids. And yes, definitely acknowledging and helping our kids see the other person on the screen. I had a recent experience with my daughter where she said, I was just asking that person questions. And the other person was very offended. And I said, hold on a second. We have to re-look at this conversation and think about what was going on. It's very difficult for us to empathize and care about these people who we are not looking face to face. They would never say to somebody, in front of them, you're fat. Because what happens when you say something horrible like that, you see that person crumble in front of you, and that does something, and you go, oh my gosh, you have that horrible feeling inside that you did something not right. We don't get that same thing with a screen, right? We just say like, oh, you're mean or you're ugly. And we don't get that same consequence. So then it becomes more normalized. And then when we see other people doing it, because that is something else that I see, not just in social media, but just in television and movies, it's become so normalized to be a mean girl, to be a bully, to be a mean boy, that's considered funny, witty, intelligent. Or I see a lot of girls thinking that is just a normal friendship, that you are supposed to have drama, that
it's
you're
joking.
Supposed to argue.
That's what they say. It's just a joke.
And you're like, that is not how normal relationships, that is not a good friendship. That is not someone you can trust and build a friendship with somebody who you guys have treated each other so poorly. So I think helping kids see the human being, see the humanity beyond the screen.
So I think something that is important that you mentioned is that your daughter came to you with this issue. That's not going to happen all of the time. And so how important is it, can you talk about, for parents to be where their kids are online? So a lot of parents I talk to will say, oh, I don't do social media. But their kids must be on many platforms. How important is it for parents to get on there?
Absolutely. We have got to be where our kids are. If our kids are on Snapchat, if they're on Instagram or Facebook, we have to be on there. We need to be following them. We need to have them following us back. We also should just be taking inventory of our phones and their phones often. If you look through your kid's phone and there is an app or a game you don't know about or you don't understand, it shouldn't be on there. Your child should not have any app that you have not approved of. My daughter, her friends are shocked that she and I share a cloud, that she cannot get an app unless I have looked at it and I've typed my password in. Most parents are not doing that. Their kids have their own iCloud. They're getting whatever apps they want. I feel like this is a mistake because that is a great opportunity for me and my daughter to talk about it. Oh, why do you want this? Okay, it does what? Okay, let me check it out. Sometimes I might try it out myself. And yes, I don't always understand it's a photo app and I have to play around with it in order to understand it. Or she'll have to show me how it works. Mm-hmm. And that's okay. We want our kids to teach us what's going on in this technology. But we also need to be aware that a lot of kids, even within the church, are creating fake accounts, whether that's on Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, that they are creating various anonymous accounts. And sometimes this is to hide information from parents. Sometimes it's also just to have an inner circle of close friends. I've seen that often too, where maybe they have an account for everybody at school and then they have an account with just 10 or 15 close friends. But again, these are the conversations. You need to have these conversations with your kids. And then that way they kind of know, what's going on. And then to continue those conversations. If you feel like your kid is hiding something, you continue that conversation and prayerfully think about it. Ask Heavenly Father what to do. I have found that. So I've done all this research, all this studying. I go around and speak to parents too, but almost every single time that something has gone amiss, it has been the Spirit that has told me. It has not been me using some magical app or monitoring or filtering. It has been the Spirit who has said, go look at that. Go see what your child's doing. Pick up your daughter's phone. Pick up your son's phone. That is where I have had all of my inspiration.
That is wonderful for you to say that. And technology has made it to the point now where it's fairly simple for parents to make it so their kids do have to get approval for things so that you can check it out first. I mean, it's I think, pretty common sense. It's a lot of work, though. I mean, we can't fake that it's not almost a full-time job to keep up on your kids' phones. Let's talk about time. When we talk about video games and now they have everything in the palm of their hand and tablets and everything, it can take over kids' lives. How can we help them so that they're seeing that there's more to life than just what's in the palm of their hand and have some actual social interaction too? And really the etiquette of what that means? How do we reinforce that?
So I think first of all is we have to model it, right? Because I know that all of us.
Okay, because I hear parents say, I have different rules than my children.
I don't believe in that.
Same rules.
I don't agree with that. If you expect your children to do something, you better be showing it. The home is the best classroom in the entire planet, and they are watching you. If you are looking at porn, if you are spending your time following Kim Kardashian, guess who your kids are going to be following and doing as well, okay? So set that example. If you are texting and driving, your kids are going to be texting and driving. If you're sitting at the dinner table and you're telling them to put their phones away and then you say, hold on a second, and you go in, they're going to do it too, okay? So we have to have that standard for ourselves, and then it makes it a little easier to expect it from our children. But again, just continuing those conversations and calling them on things. There's certain things where I don't think they even realize because they've had it their whole lives. These are new to us. We can remember a time without the social media. We can remember what it meant to pick up the phone and call a friend and how great that was, or to meet up with somebody and to not to check every 2 seconds. Are you coming yet? Are you there? This is where I'm waiting. We used to have to call up, make an appointment with a friend, right? And meet them at the movie and then stand there and hope they showed up, right? They don't know what that's like. So we have to kind of help them understand the importance of putting phones away, of having etiquette, of having a real conversation. So my daughter is 16, so she recently started dating, and I let her know this was not going to be a texting relationship because I saw that starting out. How are you? What's going on? And I was like, absolutely not. And we said, you guys are allowed 10 texts a day. You guys need to call each other. And at first she was aghast. Are you kidding? Because that's not what any of her friends were doing. Within a week, she was thanking me. She was like, this is awesome. Because she was finally getting to know this person as a human being, not just in the superficial sense of texting. And I'm not saying texting is bad. I love texting my husband throughout the day. Hey, how's your day going? Hey, I miss you. I love you. Those are great things, but that's not the basis of a relationship. And we have to model that for our kids and help them know that there's so many more richer, fuller experiences, including dating, including courtship, that those are things, and to have those face-to-face social interactions, to have friends over to your house, to go and have experiences where they are living life. So I think it's a balance. I don't think it's shutting it out, but again, it's about teaching them where is the appropriate place and when is it time to put it away.
And the mentoring, which may be the most difficult for parents, I think.
I think so.
Let's talk about when kids first get started on social media, which should not be before the age of 13. It's the law, if people don't realize that. So when they're 13 and you're not lying to get them a social media page, what are some tips you give parents when their kids are first starting out? Because this is where you can have the most impact, I think.
Absolutely. So again, like I said before, so first you're going to follow them and you're going to show them, you're going to navigate it. You should hopefully have that social media with them. Okay. So maybe it's Instagram. You're going to show them what you know about it and you're going to allow them to teach you about it. I actually like it when my daughter can show me, this is how you do a Facebook story. This is how you do a layout. I think that's a great conversation because it's not an us versus them. This should be a journey together, and maybe this is something that would be a great family council. How are we going to manage our social media and all of our media for that matter? I would say every 6 months or so, we do some sort of inventory because something new comes up. There's either a new app or there's a new situation that we have to go, okay, wait, how are we spending our time? Where we will discuss as a family, okay, is this the best use of our time? And I allow my kids to say, okay, what am I doing? Are you guys noticing anything? And they might tell me, yeah, we're watching TV and you have your phone out, Mom. I'm like, yeah, 2 screens, maybe that's a little too much, right? So helping them have a voice in the home, I think is huge. But also, again, just giving them letting them know what's going on. I don't think we have to totally freak them out and terrify them, but they need to know consequences. They don't give personal information out, and this is why. You can share with them. There are things that happen to kids. We don't talk to strangers online. We're not going to give out our personal information, but also helping them understand and see, well, what are the good things we can do? Let them see or, have a discussion with them about maybe some negative experiences maybe you've had, or maybe you have been, maybe somebody didn't understand quite what you were saying, or maybe where you misinterpreted what somebody else was saying on social media, and then teaching them and showing them good examples of how we can behave online. So, hey, can we compliment our friends? what are some good things we can say to our friends, not just always just liking a photo? How can we uplift people? So showing them that vision of what social media could be, that it can be a good, powerful, beautiful force for good, not just a place for us to argue about politics or, make fun of each other.
Yeah. So I think when they're 13 and they're a little more moldable, but what a great way to get them started. Then I think you've kind of already mentioned this with your story about your 16-year-old, but as they get older and they're in high school, do we back off on that? Do we still monitor? What are your thoughts?
I think that's something that each home needs to decide, and it should be something very prayerful. And you're going to notice that every child is different and will require different things. And I know this is hard for parents because we want to just check it off, but we do not check off parenting. And this is parenting in the digital age. So we need to have a certain set of expectations for each child. So that is, okay, what is age appropriate? When is the right time to get a smartphone? I think that is something that to put off as long as possible. My kids at their high school, they're almost required to have a smartphone for their classes. So that was something that we had to adjust and adapt to. But as they get older, you also are getting them ready, though, to leave the home, right? So I want my kids to be able to make mistakes while they're still living with us. So maybe we are going to monitor less. But again, that is something that needs to be decided between husband and wife, or if you're a single parent, you need to prayerfully decide what is that standard and what are you going to do at your home. I think there are some kids that need constant surveillance. There are kids that you're going to need to watch. Maybe they've had a bullying experience that whether they've been bullied or they have bullied someone else, you're going to want to watch their texts. But if they are a child that has proven over and over again to be doing well, then maybe you can back off. You have to decide that, though, on your own. I've heard great stories and horror stories on the whole continuum, for parents who had almost no monitoring to parents who had far too much monitoring. There is always going to be different things and different experiences with each child. And I know it's like we want one pat answer. There isn't a pat answer for this. You have to get to know your child and keep that dialogue going, keep that family council going when it comes to technology, not just for phones, but for laptops, we have that our kids do their homework at the kitchen table with the laptops out where they can see each other what they're doing. That happens to work in our home. You got to figure out what works in your home.
Yeah, and every child's different. It's hard to convince them, though, that they each get separate rules depending on how they act.
Yep.
You mentioned not sharing personal information. I think there's some really basic guidelines we have to teach our kids. Disappearing messages are the rage right now. So every social media platform now has this capability of sending and receiving disappearing messages. How can we teach our kids the fact, and it is a fact, that nothing ever truly disappears online? I think that is a false sense of security a lot of teens have.
Absolutely. And not just with the disappearing photos, but with any social media, that we have to be very wise in what we're sharing. Recently, my daughter and I had a discussion about some Instagram pages that we saw that were being run by LDS kids. They were things like Mormon hotties and Mormon babes. These were not everybody was fully clothed in these, and you could tell they were LDS, but I said to my daughter, what happens if someone decides to change this page? I go, those kids have no control over their picture that they submitted 6 months ago, a year ago. I go, what if they do decide to start putting bikini-clad people on that page? What happens when those kids want to go to BYU and they find their pictures are on that same page? So that was just a simple discussion, but I could see my daughter go, oh my gosh, where she understood this is much bigger than we think about. I've shown them things that I've been on Facebook for 7 or 8 years. I'm like, it is all there. I said, take the time to have that discussion that nothing disappears, and that a lot of our privacy online is an illusion. That is, again, part of being a digital citizen, that I'm going to be very deliberate in everything I say and do, just as I would at school. I'm not just going to say whatever I feel like in the middle of a classroom. I'm not going to stand up in Sunday school and say anything that's crazy, right? I have to be deliberate. I have to be thoughtful. And that includes our online life. So it's helping kids merge those two identities, that I'm not going to have one identity online. I'm not going to have another identity for church. It is all one identity. That, I think, is super helpful for kids.
We live in a small town, so I always tell my kids, you have to imagine this being on a billboard on the corner. Are you okay with that?
Yeah.
Because that's basically what you're doing. Anyone could take a screenshot. Nothing disappears. I think it's hard for kids to remember that, though. It's like you said, every 6 months. I think pretty often we have to remind our kids of that because they forget. Let's talk about some positives. There are so many positives that we can have with technology. That's another argument, I think, against saying, I'm never letting my kids on social media. Because let's talk about those positives. What are the positives that you see coming from the digital age?
So recently I was reading about a student body president who he had an anonymous Twitter page, and he spent the entire time on that Twitter page complimenting his classmates. And he did not reveal it until he was graduating or had already graduated. So he had spent all this time, and he had also recruited other people. So that was actually another experience where another kid had started that, but he also realized, well, I don't know the soccer team. And he recruited somebody from the soccer team to compliment other kids on the soccer team. And then he recruited somebody from the band to do kids in the band. And so then it grew just not from him, but he was able to build this basically a social network of positivity. So that's one great example. So I think just showing our kids these examples, it opens their eyes to, maybe I can do something. I have kids at my school with special needs. What could I do positively using technology with them? I saw another great example of a teenager who had created an app called Sit With Me. And that is to help kids that don't have anyone to sit with at lunch. So you can look on this app and basically they have designated themselves as people you can come and sit with. So they can go and sit, so they never have to sit alone at school. I'm like, this is a great idea. This was a teenager who thought of this idea. I know of another girl who started a change.org petition and in her community to stop plastic bags because she had shown pictures of where it had been polluted and caught in the river and ruined some of the waterways in her community. That was in Houston, I believe. So she started a petition with her family. These are simple things that we kind of tend to think, that's an adult thing. We've got to get our kids thinking about all the amazing things that we can do through social media and other technology.
Also, I think it's so important I try to encourage my kids, and some of them do and some of them don't, but to follow church accounts or follow uplifting accounts, because as you're scrolling through your feed, for me even, it's just great to come across something positive as you're scrolling.
Absolutely. That is huge. I know that that's something that has helped me to start the day out with a positive message, whether that's from a church leader and there are a lot of positive accounts out there, and they're not all adults. A lot of them are run by teenagers. And I'm like, again, showing our kids this is a possibility. You can do this, helping them understand how easy it would be to create things. I mean, they have apps now that you can design the app, you can design the message in under 2 or 3 minutes. You get a quote that you like, you put it on this beautiful background, you put it on. I'm like, they've done, all the hard work has been done for us. A place like change.org with a petition, I'm like, creating a petition when you and I were a kid, that would have been a monumental effort to have to get media attention, to have to go and speak to reporters about this, to have to go and publicly speak in different communities and churches. I'm like, they don't have to do that anymore. They can go and create this and put it on their social media. And I think that's also huge, is helping them realize that their influence, when you and I were kids, again, our influence might have been in our church or our high school. I went to a high school of, 3,000. That was the end of my influence. That was if I even got that far. Mm-hmm. And now helping our kids realize you have limitless influence. If you put your heart and soul into this, you could reach hundreds, you could reach thousands with your message.
You talked a little bit about this with your daughter showing you things on different social media platforms, but really, we could really bond with our children over technology. What are some ways that we could do that?
I think just spending the time with them, opening the dialogue. I know a lot of parents who are just afraid to talk about it, or they don't understand all of it. And so they also don't want to let on to their kids that they don't understand. I think that's a huge mistake. I think open the door and ask your kids the question, what do you know about this? Oh, I heard about this app on the news. What do you know about it? What are your friends doing? That opens the conversation. I'm a big conversation person with my kids. So I think using that time to just discuss, because I have learned basically a lot of what I know about social media from my kids, and then taking that and doing more research on it. But I think, I have grown up with being taught that video games are a terrible thing, right? And I honestly don't like video games, but I also am seeing with my son that is actually a good bonding time. So we had a night where he put us all on Minecraft, right? And I was very resistant to this, but then I kind of did it, and then it became like silly, and then it was actually fun. It became a family thing that we did together for a couple of nights. He probably would have loved it if we had done it more, but I think that was the time we were like in the middle of a move. But that was a great experience. That is a positive game, right? It's all about building and creating. So find those things. Again, meet your kid where they're at. If they are a big gamer, you got to sit down and play those games with them, If they're on social media all the time, spend that time with them, creating that relationship online and offline.
Let's talk about how we can help our children have success in their social media life and digital life. Because if we do just give them their phone, it's unlikely they're going to be successful. They're going to make mistakes, which is okay. But if you're a parent, one of those parents who hasn't done anything, you bought your child a smartphone, you never did anything, there's no restrictions on it, it can be overwhelming for parents. What's just a good place to start?
I think a good place to start is one with a conversation. Maybe they just watched this show and they said, hey, I just saw some things. I'm sorry, I haven't done this before. We should have done this in the beginning of having either a cell phone contract or just a discussion of guidelines. So I think, again, using that family council and writing down what are some rules you think. I am always surprised that my kids sometimes come back with stricter rules than I had even imagined. And of course, I'm like, oh, I'm happy to write that down.
Yeah.
So that is also something huge. So kind of deciding, well, what is an equitable rule for both of us?
And on those, we're talking time maybe, or
absolutely
cell-free zones.
Time management, rules, etiquette. So, okay, you're in Sunday school. You are not going to pull that phone out unless it is to read a scripture. You are going to pay attention to your teacher and give them the respect that they deserve. Helping them again with social media. Having different time, I know that we have time limits in our home that work for us. Our kids are not allowed to play on the computer until all of their homework is done and they have read for at least 30 minutes, and then they are allowed 30 minutes of computer time. That I know for some people is super strict. And when I started it, I thought my kids were going to freak out. I thought, okay, let's see how. I thought I was going to have anarchy on my house. Nothing. They were like, okay.
Well, and
they
the
just
great
took
thing
it and did it.
So many computers now make it easy for you to let the computer be the bad guy, because you set those restrictions on there and you're just like,
and then it turns off.
Yeah.
And I do find that Apple computers are a little more friendly for things like that. Yeah. They have better tools for monitoring. Not to say that both Microsoft and Apple, you go on their websites, there are tons of simple tutorials where you can just, search for something and it will show you within 2 minutes how to put a parental control on the laptop, on the tablet. Super easy. So I think one thing that parents don't realize, it's super easy to do that. And it's okay. So maybe they gave the child the phone a year ago. It's okay to say, you know what? I made a mistake in not setting these parameters out before. These are some new rules we're going to have. We're going to try it out and see how it works. Try it out, and you'll usually find that it's a good rule and that you're probably going to have to add another layer onto that. So I think starting there with some simple rules for yourself and for the child, and then having those discussions about social media. I think it also helps to not start them out on 3 or 4 social media platforms. They should only start with one if they're going to have that. If they, again, have already been on 3 or 4, you have a lot of work to do. And you're going to, again, have to follow them on those. Lots of discussions about those, about disappearing messages, about Instagram, about, Twitter, Facebook. I don't think most people realize, there's pornography on all of those. Yeah. And only Facebook and Instagram even pay lip service to blocking that. Twitter, Tumblr, they'll tell you you're on your own.
Yeah.
And most people don't even realize that many innocent searches right on those social media is where a lot of our kids are being exposed. If you do a search for porn on Instagram, you're not going to find anything. But you do a search for teen, certain emojis, even family, you're going to find something. Mm-hmm. And so again, helping your kids, and there's no monitoring for that. There's no monitoring system yet that can monitor social media completely.
So like I mentioned before, it's a full-time job to monitor your kids and what they're doing online. And I think a lot of parents feel completely overwhelmed. So as we wrap up, what would your message be to those parents who feel like this is too much. I can never handle any of this. There've got to be some bite-sized little bits of advice that you have for those parents to, if you haven't done it, start, and if you're doing it, to keep doing it.
Yeah, I think one, give yourself a break, okay? None of us are doing it perfectly. You know, our parents didn't do this. We have not seen our parents do this.
We are the guinea pig parent generation.
This is new new territory for all of us. So give yourself a break, first of all. And two, just do it a little bit at a time. I had one conference that I was at, and a woman raised her hand. She's like, I have 6 children. And I said, you are going to just do the best you can. You're going to talk, you're going to have that face-to-face time as much as possible with your kids. You are going to talk with your kids about, in those family councils with that. But you're going to make mistakes, and your kids are going to make mistakes. But the point is we want our kids to make those mistakes while they're still at home. They're going to go into an unfiltered world when they leave our homes. Even if they go to a church school, they are going to be exposed to things. They may not have they may choose as an 18-year-old adult to not have filters on their computers and on their phones. So I would say, look at the big picture. That to me would be my takeaway advice is think about your end goal. What do you want for them as a digital citizen when they leave your home? Is that to be totally functioning? Is that to be reliant on you? No. So start small. Start simple with little kids of having those blocks and monitors. With older kids, continue those conversations, but also helping them get ready to leave your home. And that is a prayerful discussion that you are going to have within your family. Does that mean that before they leave the home, we're going to take the blocks off so that they know what it's like? And see, again, that is a discussion to have with your husband or wife, and to prayerfully take that out and just rely on the Lord. We're not going to be perfect. We're going to mess up. So allow the atonement to work in your life and help you when you cannot do everything you want to do.
That is perfect advice. Thank you so much for coming today.
Thank you.
Thanks so much to Dina Alexander, the founder and president of Educate and Empower Kids. She shared some wonderful advice today for parents on helping mold our children into good digital citizens. Thank you so much for joining us. Gospel Solutions for Families on the Mormon Channel. Subscribe to the podcast on mormonchannel.org, the Mormon Channel app, or on iTunes.